Hello, I'm Ian Truscott. You may know me as the host of the Rockstar CMO Effing Marketing Podcast, but I'm here to share that we're kicking off the inaugural MPN Podcast Awards, which will be hosted by Gordon Glenister, podcaster, author, and the Don of influencer marketing. What say you, Gordon?
The Marketing Podcast Network is a community of marketers who podcast. And we thought it was high time to recognize the podcasts that we love, marketing podcasts. But these awards aren't just about the shows on our network. The MPN Awards are open to all marketing podcasts. And this is our chance to shine a light on the voices right across the entire marketing podcast community. So don't delay. Enter the MPN Awards.
You heard Gordon. Let us know your favorite marketing podcast and enter at mpn-awards.com or follow the Marketing Podcast Network on LinkedIn for all of our updates.
You enjoy podcasts. We know because you're listening to one. Hi, I'm Jason Falls, the executive producer of the Marketing Podcast Network. We love podcasts too, so much so that in addition to providing you with the great episode you're listening to, we also help businesses, brands, and even individuals produce their podcasts. MPN Studios offers podcast consulting and production services to help you get you or your business its very own podcast. We've helped dozens of smart people, advertising agencies, and brands develop podcasts. All you do is record your content or interview. We take that and deliver a professionally produced audio or video episode complete with show notes, transcriptions, and even promotional clips to use on social media. And our monthly subscription prices are hard to beat. If you or your company are jonesing to have your own podcast to establish thought leadership, drive business leads, or just have fun talking about your business or topic of choice, we'd love to help. Learn more at marketingpodcasts.net/studio. That's marketingpodcasts.net/studio.
Welcome to Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the meaning and the power of the most important story in business. The one that answers why someone should buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. This is the story that defines the very character and nature of an organization. At Vendilli, we call it your capital S story. In each episode of Storylines Live, we feature guests who have great insights on business storytelling, who can share their experiences and key learnings to help you and your business do a better job of sharing your capital S story to deliver remarkable business results. And today we're honored to have Kevin Cover as our guest. Now, he's got quite a bio. Kevin has spent 35 years building teams across 5 different industries before he understood what actually made them work. It's not the right hires, not the right incentives. It's not even the right leader in the right room at the right moment. It's the system underneath it all. Now, Kevin's run car dealerships, built franchise operations, scaled a sales division from a single kiosk to over $20 million in revenue, and led more than 100 people across 15 campuses in higher education. His book, The Rhythm Wave, 6 Laws to Build a Leadership System Without Heroes, launched recently, and when it did, it hit number 1 in its category on Amazon on day 1. Kevin, welcome to Storylines Live. Did I miss anything in that intro you think our audience should know about?
No, I appreciate the intro, and it's feels good to hear the words from someone's mouth. I'm humbled to be here, and I appreciate it.
Well, one of the reasons that we wanted to have you on is because, like me, you're an author, and we certainly want to chat about your book. But first, we always ask our guests on Storylines Live about their capital S story. And as I do in every introduction, I tick off the 4 questions that a great capital S story answers: why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you. And we're always curious to know from our guest, Kevin, which one of those 4 is most important for you right now and your journey?
At this point, first I'd say they're mostly interchangeable to me. They
Great.
accomplish the mission, but currently in working with leaders and with my career arc, that's where I spend my time focusing, is how to train leaders not to be the hero, but to develop a rhythm It's a big difference in how we operate and how we're able to scale ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's awesome, and for longtime viewers or listeners of the show, I've talked about this on many episodes. There are lots of different kinds of stories and lots of different kinds of heroes, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, Kevin, because there is sort of this pop culture thing about being the hero, right? And for a leader, and that's a lot of what you've built your process and your book and your thinking around it. And I really want to dig into that. And first of all, though, I want to start with some personal things. What's your story, and how does it inform what you do on a daily basis?
Well, I'm I'm not what I would consider an academic. I'm
Looked
not a
at academia.
guru.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Sure.
I won't quote, and I won't discuss research other than to back what I've learned out there in the field, living it live by tripping and falling and failing, and really from there recognizing patterns. Everything that I can talk about. Going back to the day I dropped out of college and started working in a car dealership, up to managing the 100+ people most recently, and now writing the book and starting this is it's all lived. It's all from my experience and my perspective and what came out of it from there. So, we could stop at any place, but if we're going to talk about leadership, then I could probably work with that.
Yeah.
My most recent job was with Universal Technical Institute, which is a publicly traded trade school conglomerate, over 15 campuses,
Wow.
12 different areas of study, new students starting every 3 weeks. And anyone that's worked in the public environment knows that, it's the forecasting in the next quarter and the revenue. And, it creates a little bit of a challenge when you're working with a group of 100 people that are there to help students, get people that maybe wouldn't have another opportunity to go to college and graduate. And, and when you would see these kids finish, or adults with their parents out there crying, first graduate, it was really rewarding versus the executive culture, which is understandable, of
Mhm.
where's the profit? What are we going to communicate to the investors?
Mhm.
So the way that ties in is there was a decision made after a few years that I was there to cut compensation on the admissions team by an average of about 15%. So substantial.
Yes.
And you can imagine communicating that to your team and, trying to explain the reasoning behind it
Mhm.
and build that internal story. And that's where it really tests what I try and build. Everything that I talk about, Paul, is based on a sequence that is the foundation for everything. And it has to be in a certain order.
Mhm.
In order to move people, first they need to like you.
Yes.
I mean, that's a non-starter, right?
Mhm.
And I'm going to skip where I think a lot of leaders go, and I've gone in the past, is to understand. You want to explain just why it's happening and why it needs to be. What most of us skip is that middle rung, the trust rung,
Yes.
where you've created a safety and an environment where you can share openly and your team can share back openly. And there's a lot of ways to get that done, that in a simple format, which I could explain. But when we almost lost no one through that compensation loss. Not only that, we increased our net revenue by over 10% that year in the face of a 15% compensation. And again, almost like less than 2% of the people quit. So that's really the story that really makes me feel great about
Mhm.
the system and the integrity behind it.
And that's experience, which, well, you said that was your last job working for someone else. That's what led you to take your whole process to the marketplace of ideas to help other leaders?
Yes, yeah, for sure. When I left, and I left ultimately because I wasn't comfortable in a profit before people environment. While I understand it, my belief in the way I always will operate is profit is a result.
Yes.
Now, no one gets paid if there's not profit. So I don't mean to diminish, but when you reverse engineer it and you spend your time building individual metrics, you get to focus on activities and effort, and the result is the profit. So that and all that organically gets you into that like, trust, and understand, because people are celebrating the right things, not
Yeah.
just the outcome, which is, and the hero, Paul, could be you or me leading a team, or it could be us leaning on a small group of individuals to drive the
Right.
majority of the business. Either way, it's not sustainable and not scalable.
Right, right. I think that is really a critical understanding, because what we've learned at our firm about storytelling in business is that everybody needs to be in the story, if you will, a character in the story, meaning everybody has a role to play. And you know, for us, one of our main tap roots is the thinking of Simon Sinek, who wrote the book Start With Why.
Mhm.
Uh, you know, Sinek said, I'm slightly paraphrasing exactly what you just shared a couple minutes ago, that making a profit is not a reason for doing what you do. It's an outcome, right? Now, again, like you said, yeah, it's a table stake. If you're in the private sector, you want to be delivering a return on the investment, but that's not the motivating factor to get people on the same page, working as a team, right? Headed in the right direction to create that result. They need, in my parlance, they need to know the story, right? And that has to come from, in our language, in our system, we call it the fluent storyteller. And that's the person you just described, the person that you know, like, and trust, right?
Yep.
Just to dig a little bit deeper into the example you just shared, what is it that you said to your team when they got a 15% average pay cut to keep them motivated that led them to deliver these results?
I think I would take it back one step for context.
Sure.
The way that, for me, you get the right story is everyone's reading from the same book.
Yep.
And in order to do that, clarity and rhythm will always outlast momentum that's artificially built by the rah-rah speeches and the, win one for the Gipper. You can get burst, but if you want sustainable growth and people to follow you, there needs to be clarity. And clarity is set in my world by very specific meeting days and subjects. And as an example, and I'll definitely get to your question, because it's,
Oh, this is great.
it's the end point, right? But
Yeah.
on Mondays, in almost every business I've seen and worked, that would be the celebration of the heroes from the previous week.
Mhm.
Who brought in the most revenue, who came up with the big idea. And it starts a week where you're propping up yourself or two or three people instead of your team. So I stopped communicating Mondays like that. I started communicating Mondays by asking questions about what we learned the previous week. What were the opportunities? And it could also be what are the successes? It's not, you can't celebrate success, but it can't be the only fundamental reason, or else it's firmly placing that eye on the end game.
Mhm.
And 90% of the people feel like they're losing, even if they're running it the way you want, and they're handling their daily activities. So all that's to say, when you have 100 people that are reporting up through you, and I had leaders that were over them as well, so it wasn't me with 100 one-on-ones. That's not sustainable either.
Right. Sure.
But because of that was the operating system, and that was the way we communicated, and everyone was comfortable, it enabled them and us to have honest and truthful conversations and not make it up. So the simple answer is, you just tell the truth. The organization cannot sustain growth the way it needs to with continuing to pay at these levels. and I understand that everyone has, a life and a family, and I respect that. And if that leads to you leaving for another opportunity, I will be the first one to write the letter. The only thing I'll ask is, as long as you're staying here, you continue to work the system the way that we've talked about, and you transparently share your feelings so we can address them as they come in. And
Mhm.
just, you can't say things like that unless you've built that like, trust, and understand as the
Yeah.
foundation. It's just not, and it also goes equally with demonstrating interest in your people. And I'm not
Yes.
talking about, hi, how's your weekend, waving when you walk into your office. Really investing in your people and understanding how they receive information, how they live their lives, what's important to them,
Mhm.
because that creates that reciprocity where they want to follow you and they want to succeed for you, for themselves, and they see the environment equally as important as their income.
Yeah. I mean, that is just really awesome. Some real knowledge bombs there for sure. When we talk at our firm about everybody having a role in the story, if you will, if you don't know the backstory of your people, if you don't know their family story, why they took the job at your place, what they most want to get out of the experience of working for you, what their next career step is that they hope, whether they have kids, do they have hobbies, what do they do for fun, right? It's
Yeah.
very difficult to establish that like, trust, and understand piece that you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And beyond that, I'd like to think that there's a lot of good people in the world and you do things because you want to.
Yes.
But on the business side, what I've learned through my career arc is, if you don't approach it that way and you are the hero and everyone's leaning on you and you've created a dependency that's mass disrespect, you are confined to one building and
Wow.
you cannot expand outside that building because you can't be in three places at once. And I've lived it in real time. I call it the collapse. And the collapse is not a failure from the start. The collapse is when you've reached a certain level and you took your eye off the ball, or you don't have a process that can exist when you're not there.
That is really profound. Kevin, I want to put a pin in that right there. Folks, we're going to take a quick break. And we come back, we're going to dig into the rhythm leadership model that Kevin put together, understand how it works and how it can create success. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Study, and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal, everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last, ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
Welcome back, folks, to Storylines Live. In this episode, we have as our guest Kevin Cover, who has developed the rhythm leadership process and written a book about it. And we've had a great discussion about the role of storytelling in leadership and Kevin's thoughts on that. Now, we want to take a deeper dive into the rhythm leadership process. So, Kevin, can you give our audience an idea of how you help people and businesses with your process?
Yeah, again, I think the key is that it's a learned process over 35 years that I wish somebody would have handed me 35 years ago, because it's not theory, it's lived, and it's 6 independent laws that, rather than acting like a ladder, and I think that's a common mistake for leaders, they think that
Mhm.
you build a process, you climb one step at a time, and you get to the top and you say, I did it, I won, this is fantastic.
It's linear, right? And this is not linear.
No, absolutely not. And that's thus the rhythm wave, because there's 6 laws that coexist and overlap. And if you miss any one of them and you don't have that built into your daily, weekly life and operate your entire life that way, you will find collapse. And more, just equally importantly, you can't scale.
Mm-hmm.
So I can try and walk you through it in a
Yeah,
simple
please.
format.
Maybe just like give our audience like a high level look at what are these 6 laws that are part of the rhythm wave.
Well, law one is what we spent a lot of time on. Law one is like, trust, and understand. And the way I say it is, being liked fills your ego, but being trusted fills your calendar. So,
Yeah.
law one is the operating system that transfers those silent moments where you go from like to trust. You become a leader instead of a boss, a consultant instead of a salesperson. So
Mhm.
it's how to make that transfer, because that was a big one for me, going from a golden retriever to someone that would follow me and trust me to help them make the right decisions in their life and their business and accordingly. So
Mhm.
that's the foundation for everything. I think I've beaten that one down enough. If you don't build that, the system's flawed to begin with, and you will find the cracks and ultimately collapse.
Wow. And the second law?
I call it the box, and the box is the understanding that every hesitation has an address. It always drove me crazy when I would ask why someone didn't buy or enroll or complete a task, and there would be hundreds of different answers. I
Mm-hmm.
said, well, there can't be hundreds of different answers. So what we did is we developed a system that helps you define where hesitation lives into one of 4 different spots.
Mm.
And once you understand that, again, you can have that consulting conversation. You can say, Paul, I I heard you say the campus is too far, for example, because I was in education. However,
Admissions, right?
yeah, and people say the reason would be it's too far. And my reason is you haven't demonstrated enough value for them to make the trip. So rephrasing to, Paul, if you truly thought we were worth it, you'd probably drive that extra half an hour, right? So I guess what I'm asking is, what is it that you don't see as value? Is that right? And so reframing and putting them into one of the 4 boxes, creating agreement, an amazing way to build trust,
Wow.
and also a really, really active listening way to solve objection.
And what's the third law?
The third law is rhythm. So this is where you take a cadence that creates confidence to follow you. You create a predictable schedule that builds clarity, because every week needs a beat before the numbers can rise.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not following those patterns and building that rhythm, it's a tack on to trust. I know what to expect. I'm not going to get surprised. And I know that it's not all about the outcome every single day. There's a
Yes.
different conversation every day that enables me to take a breath, analyze where I am, and move forward, which that pull automatically spins into law 4, which is
Mhm.
momentum. When you create rhythm, you're not looking, and you're not in the results that you hope for. You're living in behaviors that repeat. So momentum, people talk about as a way to build the energy. And in a hero world, that's how you build it. You
Mhm.
walk in and you are the stimulus for the entire building, and everybody rises and falls with you. And what I'm suggesting in the way that you scale is you eliminate that need by building the predictable rhythm in their daily schedules
Mm.
and conversations.
So you don't have to, as a leader, pump people up because the rhythm is creating the momentum.
Absolutely. And you're celebrating the individual hurdles, not winning the race.
Wow. Wow, that's great. And the fifth law?
That's reciprocity. That's, again, you'll see as they go through, it's like, well, they're kind of all tie in. And the challenge with most people when they talk about reciprocity is they think it's give me something small, give me a pen, and now you're going to go use it to write for me. Reciprocity stems from truth and integrity and being a servant leader, spending that time. So that's what I mean when I talk about reciprocity. It's give before you ask, serve before you sell, and the door will open when they open it. And you
Mhm.
can't open it for them. You have to build that trust, that and belief through organic interest.
Wow, that's great. All right, the capstone, the sixth law.
That's the one we talked about before. And actually, when I train with this one first. That's collapse.
Collapse.
And collapse whispers before it screams, is as I say. And if you don't protect those first 5 laws, you don't even know it's coming. You think that you've upped your game and you've elevated and you don't need to do the things because you built that system. And I'm here to tell you, it's never built. It always has to have upkeep, just like a house or a yard or anything else. You don't walk away from it. So collapse is identifying those where, if I'm missing, which one of the prior 5 did I miss? Where am I losing? Am I not investing enough time? Am I not holding my meetings? Am I not isolating concerns in the right order? Am I not spending my time building like, trust, and understand? You can identify quickly, and they show up in the individual metrics is the crazy thing. You can almost see, like you're a mechanic on a car, where the
Right.
breakdown is when you
The
step back
diagnosing,
and you
right?
analyze it simply.
Wow. Oh, that's amazing. And that is so much like what we talk with our clients about in terms of the story. You said the system's never built. Your story needs to continue to evolve. It can't be the same story over and over again, because if you're moving the organization forward, as you've described using your 6 laws of rhythm wave leadership, people need to see the next goalpost. They need to see the next destination, right? If you're on a journey together, right? And so the story that worked at the very beginning of the journey is not the story that's going to explain to you as a team where you're going to wind up next, right? That is really,
Absolutely.
that is awesome. Thank you for sharing with the audience the 6 laws. That is really amazing. Kevin, you may not be able to share names, but can you share a success story from a rhythm wave leadership, an organization or a leader that you've worked with where this process really delivered great results?
Well, I would say holistically, I can see it because I've had leaders follow me into different industries on a leap of faith just because I was there. So uh, you didn't ask about my success, but
Right.
for me, creating a path, I've created pathways where people have left their safety net to follow me into other industries, and that enabled them to elevate. I had somebody that started as a salesperson, at Greenwich Accurate with me, uh, back in the late 90s, followed me into the franchise world and became my regional leader for my franchise team.
Wow.
And then followed me into the vacation industry and membership sales and cruises, and continued to move up through there. And people are brilliant. And when you step back and you allow them to see that brilliance, you'll see people like that where you just take the raw talent and the raw character, and you give them a pathway that they can see, and they'll just continue to follow it up. I had a regional leader at my education company that he left because of the culture
Mm-hmm.
before I started. He came back because he heard that the culture had changed and we were doing things for the right reason again. And he immediately slotted in, followed the system, and elevated to another level. I mean, staggering. The leaders that shook their head and said, "Oh, you finally get it. It's about time somebody got it." And then they just unleash power for you. My regional director for the East Coast, as soon as she learned about how we were going to do it and the process, she smiled and she jumped to unbelievable success in months, and wasn't traveling as much, wasn't working as many hours, still plenty of hours. She works a tireless worker, but,
Right.
and able to get a little bit more life balance.
That's great. Kevin, it's been awesome to spend time with you in this episode. Kevin, how can our audience best reach you if they want to have a conversation?
The easiest way, well, first I would say that I'll talk to anybody about their business for nothing because I love it. I love it. And I love to just in simple ways help reshape someone and let them get to their levels. I don't run on any contracts as a consultant because my goal is to be unnecessary, not to be needed. And that's what I try and teach, and that's what I believe. So I want to step away as quick as possible once we build a system. The way that you find me is on rhythmleadershipgroup.com. You can book 30 minutes. Your audience can download the Founders Edition for free. So while I'd like you to go to Amazon and buy my book, you can have it for nothing. It has an implementation guide, a self-guide if you feel like you're there, and it has that ability to go and just have a conversation with me on your time, just a coffee chat about your business and, maybe some opportunities in a simple way.
Wow. That's awesome. Kevin, it's been such a great pleasure to have you on this episode of Storylines Live. I learned a lot. I took a lot of notes. Folks, everything that Kevin shared will be in the show notes. And in addition to thank you, Kevin, I want to, as always, thank our audience, those watching and those listening, for being here for Storylines Live, the only podcast that explores the power and the meaning of the most important story in business, the one that answers why somebody would buy from you, work for you, invest in you, or partner with you, your capital S story. We'll see you next time on the next episode of Storylines Live.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Heather Eck hosts an amazing show called Your Radiant Spirit. Heather, tell listeners about the show.
What if the colors you're drawn to, the creative urges you ignore, and the quiet intuitive hits you brush off are actually trying to tell you something? Your Radiant Spirit is the podcast that helps you listen and live with greater clarity and purpose.
And where can people subscribe?
You can find and subscribe at heathereck.com/yourradiantspirit, on marketingpodcast.net, or search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard her. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.